First play of the game, we're going blind pig.
We're going to go blind pig.
Blind pig, yeah.
So I'm also a big fan of the blind pig action.
The only reason we're running this action now is because he wanted to say blind pig.
Welcome to the Blind Pig podcast. Psyched to be back for another episode with you today, especially because we got amazing news out of Super League basketball with all of the fixtures for the regular season or the SLB Championship being revealed. So that felt like the perfect segue to talk about the 5 games that I'm most excited to see this SLB season. But before we get to that, really appreciate all the love the first video got. As a channel, we are on a journey to try and hit 50 subs before the end of 2025. So make sure you smash the like button, subscribe if you don't already, and make sure to leave a comment below. Let me know which game are you most excited to see this season, and actually, which game are you least excited to see as well, and how many of those are Caledonia games. But let's get straight to it. Before we get into the 5 games themselves, there's a couple of little nuggets actually that seeing the season schedule in full really revealed. So we only got the championship or the regular season fixtures. We didn't get any of the dates for any of the trophy games or any of the cup games. However, what we did see is actually there are gaps in the schedule that are actually pretty telling for us in terms of when things are going to take part and when that timeline is going to be. So particularly thinking about the trophy, we know that the trophy usually happens at the start of the SLB season, and there's a particular week in the end of November, so the last weekend of November, where none of the 9 SLB teams have any scheduled games. I can only assume that that is going to be the period where they're going to play the trophy quarterfinal or semi-final or whatever they want to do. But for me, probably having no games there for any team means that they're leaving that free to start off the knockout part of the SLB trophy. Similarly with the cup, so we know that we have the date for the SLB Cup, which is going to be hosted in Manchester this year. And we can see in the schedule that from January 19th through to January 25th, as for some teams that stretches even further into kind of a 2-week window, we have no games scheduled. What I imagine is that that is going to be the start of the knockout phase of the SLB Cup. Obviously, there are kind of some international breaks kind of built in, but for me, the timings would kind of work for the last weekend in November to be the start of the knockout phase of the trophy, and for January, mid-January, to be the start of the SLB Cup. The other thing that happened that now we've got these fixtures released is we've had confirmation that it will be 9 teams that will take part in the SLB this year. Unfortunately, that means that the rumoured team based in Liverpool won't be part of anything this season, but really hopeful and looking forwards to the future where more franchises will join in. Having 9 teams in the league has its own drawbacks, but one of the real benefits that we can see is that we have teams that are frequently matching up throughout the seasons, and of course, teams that are playing each other over and over again in the playoffs. 2 of those particular teams that have matched up in the last 2 years are the Leicester Riders and the Sheffield Sharks. So going back to 23-24, the Riders and the Sharks were playing each other in the first round of what was then the BBL playoffs, and a 3-game format, best of 3. We saw Leicester take the first game, and in the second game, it was a real tight affair, back and forth, all the way up till Prentice Nixon hits this game-winning shot.
Sheffield with the ball.
Final possession. Sheffield, chance to win this game. They don't want to take it into overtime. Leicester, they need 1 stop. They also have 1 foul to give away.
They look confused in their offense.
Well, here comes Nixon. Pick and roll, Nixon, pump fakes. Deep 3. Oh my goodness! Mike Tuck on his feet. Are we going to a game 3? But there's still 1.6 seconds left. Big time play. Prentice Nixon.
Absolutely mental. Crowd goes wild. The next day, we then go into another game back at Sheffield to decide who's going to win, winner takes all. And absolutely the momentum was all on the Sharks side. They ended up smashing through, helped in part by a Teddy Allen meltdown, but ultimately defeating the Riders and advancing to the semi-finals of the 23-24 playoffs. Going ahead then to the first season of the SLB in 24-25, again the Riders and the Sharks were matched up, but this time during a semi-final meeting. The Sharks took the first game by 10-game aggregates, but game 2 in Leicester was an absolutely phenomenal, tight, back and forth affair between the 2 squads. Sheffield obviously were depleted, but Leicester ended up taking that game in overtime over the Sharks.
They do need to get over mid-court, but once they do, I think Sheffield will back away and time will tick down. And the Leicester Riders, for the 7th time in the last 9 years, are going to the O2 and the playoff final.
What I absolutely love is that on both squads, you're going to have not only two coaches that remember that game last season, but also I think you're going to have lots of players that are 100% Prentice Nixon's going to remember his performance in that game too, and is going to want a little bit of revenge. I think as well, people like Duke Shelton and Spencer Johnson for Leicester will be really keen to ensure and trying to assert their dominance over Sheffield. Ultimately, we have two teams who've met each other twice in the last two playoffs, and the first meeting that they have on the 26th of September, it's at home for Leicester, and I think that's going to be a real fight and a fun way to start the season. And what I absolutely love is that on both squads, you're going to have not only two coaches that remember that game last season, but also I think you're going to have lots of players that are 100% Prentice Nixon's going to remember his performance in that game too, and is going to want a little bit of revenge. I think as well, people like Duke Shelton and Spencer Johnson for Leicester will be really keen to ensure and trying to assert their dominance over Sheffield. Ultimately, we have two teams who've met each other twice in the last two playoffs, and the first meeting that they have on the 26th of September, it's at home for Leicester, and I think that's going to be a real fight and a fun way to start the season. Moving on, one of the matchups that I'm massively keen to see this season is the battle for 8th place. With only 9 teams in the league, there's only one team that's going to miss out this SLB season. And for me, when I look and I see, across the league, based on kind of what we know, I see two teams that potentially could be our bottom 2 teams this season. And that is the Caledonia Gladiators and the Newcastle Eagles. Caledonia is still recovering from their PR nightmare that they had last year. And while they have some feel-good people coming back, I personally don't believe in Carl Jimenez as anything more than kind of a role player for that Gladiator team. I have to call out Daniel Carr as well. Out of everyone that's been announced so far, Daniel Carr looks like the player that's most likely to be dunked on this season. I think the roster could definitely struggle based on what we know already. Great to see Jet Spielman come back today, announced today by the Gladiators. But just a little bit nervous about what that's going to be like. And I think they're really going to have to fight hard to try and get out of that 9th spot. On the other side, we have Newcastle. And Newcastle are bringing back some key players. However, if I'm honest, I just don't understand their roster. I don't understand at all how their roster matches up to what they had last year, which was a very cohesive and balanced team. To me, I just don't quite understand it. Bringing in people like Malcolm Smith, Mitch Clark, and Emmanuel Canway, they feel like, really good feel-good signings in terms of stepping up from NBL into the SLB. But I have significant questions about the impact they're going to have at this level and think they could really struggle. They also announced today a bunch of players who wouldn't be returning for the Newcastle Eagles. The person that I'm most surprised isn't coming back, although we kind of knew it based on the amount of imports they have. But still, I'm so surprised that Christian James didn't come back. Out of everyone that had been announced, he was somebody who hadn't yet revealed on Instagram or X where he's going for his next team, and someone who played such a pivotal part in Newcastle's trophy run and also in their playoff run as well. Although it didn't ultimately end in success, Christian James was a real force coming off the bench for Mark Stoutel. The game's going to take place as the very first game on the 21st of September 2025 at Caledonia. And for me, this is going to set the tone really, really early on. Which team is better? Is it Newcastle? Is it Caledonia? And who's going to start off that really vital point aggregate difference in the fight for 8th place? Looking back to last season, continuity played a huge part in Cheshire Phoenix and their early success in the trophy stage of the SLB. However, as Cam Christen got removed from the team for unknown reasons, we started to see the team kind of break down both on and off the court. And one of the fundamental things that broke down was Ben Thomas's relationship with his point guard, Cam Holden. We saw visible signs, both on and off the court, that the two were not getting along. and in particular that they wasn't producing the right synergy on the courts. Really noticeably, there was a lot of friction between the two of them on the In the Knicks podcast.
You know, once you get the adrenaline pumping, they'll die down. You know, probably when somebody say something I don't like, I'll probably get going from that. So
Normally that's me.
Yeah. You know, back on like, I wanted a bigger role. I wanted to like prove to like this league that I can play and compete. And I feel like I'm doing that as an individual, but I feel like as a team, I'm not putting the team where I want to be at right now. But you know, we dropped the trophy.
And there was also a timeout back in February where we saw Cam Holden, the cameras caught Cam Holden disagreeing with Ben, only for Ben to remove him immediately from the lineup and bring someone else in. I don't think Cam Holden was meant to be the only point guard for Cheshire last season. I always think he was meant to share that responsibility with Cam Christen. But obviously that can no longer be an option. Cheshire had to move forward with what they have. But there was definitely friction between Cam and Ben. In one of the blockbuster moves this season, Cam signed with Bristol. And I think it's fair to ask, did Cam choose to leave Cheshire, or was he pushed out and not offered the opportunity to come back? Either way, it was an absolutely huge, seismic move, and one that I personally love to see. Again, with a league with so much turnover, to have kind of a savvy person like Cam Holden move from one team to another creates a really, really interesting dynamic. And I think Bristol and Cheshire is going to be a really fun, exciting matchup throughout the whole season. One of the other things that I would kind of call out is that last season, Bristol really had Cheshire's number. They ran them off the court on multiple occasions, including one game where they ran up 122 points on them, leading to a huge apology video in the Knicks podcast. It'll be a pride thing for both sides, wanting to prove, that they are the better team, and also for Bristol, they'll want to really show that they're kind of moving up in the rankings. I think Cheshire is something that they are definitely, or a team that they are locked in terms of having to leapfrog to move up the standings. And Cheshire will want to prove that last year's a fluke, and actually that they do have a way to beat the Bristol Flyers. We'll have to wait until Friday the 24th of October to see that game, but it's one that promises to be a revenge game. In particular, Cam Holden retweeted this and let us know he's going to have that same sort of vibe as LeBron coming back to Cleveland. The last time LaQuincy Rideau was in the league playing for the Cheshire Phoenix, one of the absolute highlights that we saw was the both on-court and off-court beef between the Cheshire Phoenix and the London Lions. And who can forget the infamous punch, slap, whatever you want to call it, on LaQuincy.
Well, let's have the referees going to the table. So just watch Tariq Phillip under the basket. LaQuincy Rideau is in his face. And what happened? Oh, there's a little slap there. Did the referee see it? That is a question. Did the referee see it? Oh, I see there, referee Unsworth with on the replay, had the double fist for an ejection. So maybe he was going to be, it is an ejection. It is an ejection. And he's off. He's walking out of the building now, off to the locker room. There goes Tariq Phillip, ejected from the ball game for a little slap in the face.
You can't do that, Dan.
No.
You cannot do.
The two sides had reason to be extra competitive with one another, with Cheshire beating the heavily favoured London Lions in the 23-24 BBL Cup. Fast forward into the playoffs, it was London who hit a dagger three from Sam Decker in the corner to take that win over the Cheshire Phoenix.
All even. 25 seconds to play. 85 all in the 0-2. Shot clock at 6. Morgan. Decker. Yes!
Bang! Decker doing Sam Decker things. We've seen this multiple times this season. Comes out and hits a dagger. 9.1 seconds on the clock. Sam Decker.
Wham, bam, thank you, Sam.
It was starting off to be a rivalry with real heat and real passion that was exciting the league. However, LaQuincy moved on. Cheshire weren't very good last season, and a lot of that kind of died down. And actually, one of the other key pieces that happened is that Aaron Rye left Cheshire to go and sign in London. Went massively under the radar. I don't think the crowd gave him a hard enough time, if I'm particularly honest, with Aaron Rye. I want to see a little bit of smack talk between Q and Aaron Rye. Why'd you leave us, bro? Why'd you leave us? I don't think necessarily that Cheshire is a threat, particularly to really win either the Trophy Cup or Championship, if I'm being particularly honest. But this is one matchup that you're not going to want to miss. They'll put it all on the line, I think, and it's going to be a really tasty matchup. And we're actually going to see it in a Tuesday game on the 23rd of September, 2025. Cheshire versus London. Okay, final matchup, one that I'm most excited for, is all about who's going to prove that they are number one in the league. And I think that sits firmly between London and Manchester. The two teams have clearly formed powerhouse squads, and they're inevitably going to clash. And I think we really need someone to challenge London. A lot of pundits are leaning towards London, really calling them out as kind of the superior team. We need someone to be able to challenge that dominance. And looking at Manchester, I think they have a really, really good shot. And they're clearly two teams as well that are building towards more and more European competitions and ability to play in a high level there. First of all, though, I've just got to say, it's an absolute travesty that this game is so far away. The two sides don't meet until the 19th of December 2025. The league's going to be going for 3 months until we see these guys play for the first time. And it's not even like we're going to see them in the trophy. I'm assuming that it's still going to be kind of like that North group, South group that it was last year. So potentially we're not going to see them up until just before Christmas. And for London, they're going to be playing some teams twice before they even play Manchester. Bristol, Leicester and Cheshire. London will play them twice before they even see Manchester once. Absolutely crazy that we've allowed that to happen. This should have been game one, opening night matchup. Although if you think that's bad, the first time they'll see Surrey isn't until the 7th of February. Although I'm anticipating that they'll probably meet in the trophy. But if they mix up the groups, if they don't go with North-South, the first time you could see London versus Surrey, which was a playoff matchup last year, could be on the 7th of February. Mind-blowing. Either way, the first matchup between Manchester and London will be really setting the tone for who's going to be the dominant big dog of the season. And actually, I think it's really important that when we get to that point, hopefully both teams still have really, really strong records. And so it still carries a lot of weight into that matchup. Really exciting. Manchester and London also have a penultimate game against each other. So if we have something similar to what we had last season, it could really come down to those last few games playing against one another. Massively exciting to see. Can't wait for London versus Manchester. There we have it. 5 matchups that I'm stoked to see. Games that I'm excited to watch. To be honest, I'm just pumped to the season so close to be getting back to kind of all of it. A couple of side notes and things that I thought were interesting from the schedule. Number one, SLB is going to try and take on the NBA. So the NBA comes to Manchester, Grizzly versus Orlando on the 18th of January. We're going to have SLP games on the same day. We're going to have a game in Manchester at the same day. Absolutely mind-blowing. Would love to see them do some kind of a deal, collaboration, something like that if possible. That would be absolutely amazing. But I was really interested to see, and yes, they are going to field games on the same day. Really interesting to see what the turnout will be. Would love to know what the viewership is like. The other thing as well I think is worth calling out, just as a side note, the strength of schedule for teams really vary at the start of the year. And in particular, one that I call out is Manchester. It looks like they've got a particularly kind of soft 10 games. You know, in the league, I'm really hoping it's going to be a similar situation with parity, where anyone can beat anyone on any given Sunday. But actually, Manchester's first 10 games, they play the 89ers twice, they play the Eagles and the Glads once. And then really they're just kind of fighting with Sheffield, with Leicester. I was really interested to see that in their first 10 games, they get 5 quite soft ones pretty much straight away. There we have it, folks. Thanks so much for listening to the games that I'm most excited for this season. But let me know in the comments below, which games are you most excited for? Which ones have you already got circled and already bought tickets for? We're going to be dropping episodes all the time and more frequently as we gear up for the season. So make sure you subscribe, hit the bell to get notified when a new episode goes live. And, you know, send the podcast to someone who's also an SLB fan that can't wait for the season to start. But I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks, guys.
First play of the game, we're going blind pig.
We're going to go blind pig.
Blind pig, yeah. No, I'm also a big fan of the blind pig action.
The only reason we're running this action now is because we wanted to say blind pig and look cool.